respecting our shared humanity is step one, and then we sit down. If you can't do that first part, I don't think you can sit at that table specifically.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to POVz. I couldn't be more excited to have the one, the only Congressman Maxwell Frost with us today. As you all know, Congressman Frost represents Florida's 10th congressional district and made history this past fall by being elected to the first Gen Z seat of Congress. So, Congressman Frost, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Excited to be here.
As you know, here at the Conversationalist, our mission is to bring people together across differences. And the best way in our minds to do that is through having intentional yet challenging conversations. So I'm going to ask you a couple of tough questions. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go. So on our episode this week, we're focusing on all things America, which is something that you are clearly an expert in. And we asked a bunch of Gen Zers on our episode the question, is America great? And I would love to know your POV. What are your thoughts? Is America great?
Yeah. Well, something that I think is really important and something that I've learned over the last several years really is there's a lot of times in life where you have to hold multiple truths. As you grow up and you continue to learn about different issues within our country and outside of it, that becomes more and more real. Is America a great country? I think the idea of our country and the people of our country are a great people, right? And I think our country is a great country. But our country also does very not so great things, right? And our country also has, I would put it as an opportunity to right many wrongs and to ensure that we, see the world through the eyes of the most vulnerable and make it great for everybody, because America isn't great for everybody that lives within it. And so those are the two truths we hold, right? And I think oftentimes slogans like make America great again or different things like that, right? These things work to divide us. But when you really hold the two truths of our country or the multiple truths and think about every single person, you realize we have a lot of work to do, but we've also come so far. And that gives me a lot of optimism as part of the reason why I decided to run for Congress in the first place.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's something that a lot of people miss sometimes, that we've got to lean into the nuance. Not everything is just black and white, left or right. We can hold those multiple truths. So thank you for bringing that up. How has being in office shifted your perspective on America? Has it made you more or less patriotic? What has your experience been?
I've always been patriotic, right? I've always been a patriot. I think what we see now is there are certain people who want to create like a kind of perverted and different version of what patriotism means. And for me, patriotism isn't, just about the flag, but it's about loving the people who live within the country. When that's your energy towards patriotism, you are a freedom fighter for all people within the country. I would label myself and I would label all people who fight for every single person in our country day in, day out patriots. That's the agenda that I fight for in Congress. It's the agenda that I believe in. And it's an agenda that's not about Democrat versus Republican or Republican versus Democrat, but it's about the people versus the problem. And right now, we have a lot of problems, right? And so working to get people power together is really important.
Do you see that shift setting apart our generation from perhaps generations past in being a patriot fighting for all people? Do you think there is that generational divide?
I definitely do see a generational divide, and I always got to say, like, disclaimer, I don't speak for the entire generation, but when we look at the numbers from voting and a lot of the polling that we see, this generation's the most progressive generation in the history of our country. And what I mean by that is we're a generation that's really thinking about each other, our peers, and we're rejecting this notion of scarcity that has been the basis for politics for so long. That if you are getting something, I must be losing something. And I think we don't really buy into that generally as a generation. And we believe that we all can thrive. We can all eat and we can all have a great life. And I think, your success is my success. My success is your success. And that understanding that we're all part of this greater mosaic of humanity is really what makes this generation very unique. And it's not just Gen Z, but also it will be Gen Alpha and every generation that comes after us, hopefully.
I'll never forget on our first phone call, you shared that with me, that my success is your success. And we have to get back to that essence that we are a part of this greater mosaic. And for me, I just hope that conversations like this will help us get there and realizing our shared humanity. So thank you for sharing that. I totally hear you. I mean, the data shows our generation is the most progressive generation in our nation's history. But I did see a stat earlier that I'd love your perspective on. There's a study that came out earlier this year that found that only 16% of our generation feels proud to live in America. Are you surprised by that stat? Is that aligned with some of the conversations you're having with Gen Zers about the state of our country?
No, I mean, it's not surprising. And it doesn't mean that they hate America and everybody in it, right? I think what it means is, when you're a part of a generation, for people listening who might not belong to the generation, who are confused by that stat, just put yourself in these shoes, right? What separates Gen Z from any other generation, if you were to Google this, is that we have been immersed in technology our entire lives, right? That's like the kind of through line here. Imagine being from a generation where from a very, very, very young age, you've had access to the internet, a cell phone, and the ability to see everything that's going on in our country. With that comes good things and bad things, but part of it is also seeing the traumas in our country and the traumas across our nation and the traumas within our own communities. Being open to that and seeing that and going through more, school shooting drills and fire drills and seeing all these shootings happening and having that anxiety. All that creates a generation that has a lot of anxiety and fear built within it. And I think obviously we associate that anxiety and fear with the place that we resided in, the country that we live in. And so it's not surprising that a lot of Gen Zers may, say, yeah, I'm not proud to live in this country right now, where just yesterday I had to do a shooter drill, or we had a false shooting drill because someone walked on campus, and we have this culture of fear in this country because it's valid, because we lose over 100 people a day due to gun violence, and the leading cause of death for children is to be shot. That's not something to be proud of. And so I understand that. And it's okay to feel not displeased with the place that you live in, but still believe that, you can fight for a better world. You can hold those two truths at the same time. And I think that's really important.
It's such a glaring, stark reality. And I appreciate you so much reminding us all of that. And I think that is what our generation is calling for. We just wish other generations better understood that with the unique set of circumstances we were handed led to this specific outcome. And we obviously didn't do this alone. We're following the path of generations that came before us. And sometimes I wish there was a little bit more of that empathy. So thank you for bringing that up. What is your take on what our generation's role should be in carving out the best path forward? And where do you think we go from here?
There's a few different things. I think building power is like really at the top of the list. And there's different types of power you build as a generation or as a people or constituency. You got political power, you build cultural power. I believe in all of it. I think it's all really important. And as our generation continues to make up more of the electorate, we're going to have the ability to shape what government looks like, both on a local scale, state, and federal. That really gives me a lot of hope. I think we'll be able to really elect leaders who actually, give a damn about our lives, are willing to put, people over profits, and that's exciting. But we're also, even now and continuing to not take over, but have more influence and power within the culture of this country. And culture can drive people and drive, inspire convictions in people that drive them to make a difference in the world or think differently about the world that they live in. And that's really, really important. And so we're already seeing Gen Z really, taking over culture in some aspects and really being unafraid to use their platforms to speak about the issues they care about. You look at people like Olivia Rodrigo, who has come out and talked about these different issues at different points, or someone like Phoebe Bridgers, who's unafraid to on the Coachella stage say abortion rights, for everybody. And even though it might seem like, oh, that's not a huge thing, someone just saying something on a stage, but you have to realize that when someone's at a show like that, they are in a both vulnerable and exciting and joyful state in which their life could be changed by hearing a favorite artist say something that might, provoke a thought or provoke an action. And that's really exciting. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we can all work at building that power together.
Absolutely. And we always like to bring in Gen Z perspectives onto the show to get as many voices out there. And right before our conversation, I got a question from Chavis Chen in our community who wants to know, how do we get more Gen Zers involved in politics with all of the radical tension?
It's interesting. And this is, there's different perspectives going on. And I think the radicalism that we're seeing from the far right now is really dangerous and is part of what's fueling a lot of the anxiety in Gen Zers across the country around losing their rights and et cetera. And that's really the kind of radicalism I think that is a detriment to this country right now. And so I would encourage people to really focus on the good work going on in the country. But I don't know, I just feel like these attacks on education, these attacks on our freedoms, our rights, and our liberties are actually going to piss off Gen Zers enough stuff where they go out and they work at building power in different ways. And I think we've seen that, we had the highest youth voter turnout in the history of our country in 2020, highest midterm in 2018, right after the shooting that happened in Parkland. I think a lot of that was fueled by like a righteous rage, a righteous anger, or righteous love. As these issues continue to come up, I would encourage people to just think about the fact that we're building power no matter what happens. And here's the thing: there are going to be more mass shootings. These things are going to happen because of the inaction of our leaders. And so what we do is we work at building power so we can elect people who actually will act on this. And that's how we build the world that, we can be proud of, and a world that we're proud to grow up in.
Our work here at the Conversationalist really rests on this ideal that our generation will be the one to unify us back together. We can see through our differences. We can learn to coexist, not hold hands and sing kumbaya, but truly learn how to tolerate one another for our lived experiences. Do you think unity is possible? And do you think our generation will be the one or have the power to bring us back to sit at the same table?
I do think so, and I think part of it is because generally, as a generation, and we see it in these numbers coming out, I think we have this sense that we just, we want everyone to live their best lives, and that's it. And we want to be able to do what we want to do, and we want people to do what they want to do. We want everyone to have the resources they need. We want people who don't have resources to be taken care of. I think that's generally the attitude of this generation, and because we're like-minded in that kind of macro idea, I think it gives us the ability to sit down and maybe have the discussions on maybe the more micro or like very specifics. But because we're coming at it, in good faith, we're able to sit down. And the problem that we're seeing right now in politics is there's so many people come to the table not in good faith. When you feel that energy, you don't want to sit at a table with that person. I can never ask a trans person to sit at a table with some politician or someone who just believes that they shouldn't exist, or that, believes that they're groomers or child molesters just because of who they are. I would never ask someone to do that. And I don't think it should be on their plate to find it within them to do that. But I think like our generation and even more conservative Gen Zers, they might not be the ones that, are put on the news all the time or Fox News or whatever. But I think generally we want people to just be who they are and love who they want to love. And I think that makes it easier when we respect each other's humanity to sit down at the same table. And that's why I always try to tell people, like in politics, there are radicals on both sides that are keeping us, away from each other. And I kind of have to reject that, especially as someone within Congress, because the progressive, I guess, radicalism or whatever, people are quote unquote that you're seeing versus like someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert on kind of the other side, it's very different. You have a group of people who are rejecting the humanity of like LGBTQ plus folks, of immigrants, etc. On the progressive side of things, you have people who are like fighting for everyone to have healthcare and like fighting for for the humanity of everyone. And I just don't see that as, different sides of the same coin. Trying to pair those things together is actually not healthy. Respecting our shared humanity is step one, and then we sit down. If you can't do that first part, I don't think you can sit at that table specifically. And there are some of us that'll venture out to work at changing hearts and minds, and I try to do that, but I would never force like other people to do that. But I think we're going in a good direction to answer your question.
Well, I'm so glad you said that. I completely agree with you. And that's the thing that we struggle with here on our platform is we want to give everyone a voice, but you can't quite enter a conversation on an equal footing if you can't see someone for who they are. So it's something we're still trying to figure out, but I think there is this overwhelming sense within our generation, being the most diverse generation to date, that we want to have empathy for one another. And I hope that continues to build by building up our generation's power, like you said. So thank you for bringing that up. Every person who comes on our show, I ask this final question, which is, Congressman Frost, drop a hot take. It can be about anything: food, music, politics, anything. Go off.
Hate chocolate. I think chocolate's pretty gross.
Tell me more. Tell me why.
I think part of this has been instilled into me. So I'm allergic to a lot of different things, and I think my parents always told me I was allergic to chocolate when I grew up because they didn't want me to accidentally eat like a nut bar. And then like when I was 12 or 13, they were like, "Oh no, you're not allergic to chocolate." And I tried it for the first time. I was like, "Ew, this is disgusting." So I think part of it is like subconscious, that like my parents kind of made me not like chocolate.
Sure.
But I don't hate it. I think I don't like chocolate. I also don't like soda. And I used to love soda. I used to drink so much. It was Sprite and then it was Coke. I've cut soda 10 years ago. 4 years ago, I tried it again. I was at like a theme park and I was like, you know what? I haven't had soda in a long time. I want an ice cold Coca-Cola. And I went and bought like a big one because I was like, I'm about to down this thing. I like took 3 sips and I was like, this is disgusting. Like, I don't like it anymore. So it made me a little sad, but I was also like, that's wild.
Wow, no chocolate, no soda. So what's your drink of choice?
Water. Not to be.
Yes.
Some people call me Hydro Flask in Congress with my bottle of water, but I drink a lot of water. I love Arnold Palmer's, like a oat milk latte, stuff like
Oh,
that.
I was going to ask if you're a coffee guy. I feel
I'm not a
you. Chocolate
guy,
and
but
soda are not for everyone. But you'll have
yeah.
you'll have a oat latte. I respect that. But hey,
Well,
next time you're in New York, we'll bring our hydros. We'll hopefully grab some coffee. And thank you so much for being a part of the show today.
of course. Thanks for having me on.